While billions of people across the planet are crying in the streets, hugging strangers, and treating a soccer match like a matter of life and death, there's an entire group of Americans who just don't get it. And according to psychology, their brains might actually be built differently. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you see the World Cup-obsessed people in your life. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Not caring about the World Cup doesn't make you closed-minded. It doesn't mean you lack passion. And it definitely doesn't mean something's wrong with you. But there is something fascinating happening in your brain that's completely different from the billions of people watching this tournament like their lives depend on it. Let's start with the obvious question. Why does the rest of the world care so much? For most countries, soccer isn't a sport. It's identity. When Argentina plays, Argentina isn't watching a game. It's watching itself. Psychologists call this collective identity, the feeling that your personal worth is tied to your group's success. When the national team scores, fans get a flood of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the same chemical that makes you love your family. Their brains literally cannot separate the team from the tribe. An entire country becomes one nervous system for 90 minutes. Wild, right? But American brains? They were wired on a completely different schedule, and it started in childhood. Research shows that sports loyalty gets locked in early, usually between the ages of 8 and 12, and almost always through a parent. If your dad watched football every Sunday, your brain built its entire reward map around football. Touchdowns, buzzer beaters, home runs. Soccer never made it onto the map. Psychologists call this the mere exposure effect. We grow to love what we repeatedly see, and for decades, soccer simply wasn't on American screens. You can't crave a flavor you've never tasted. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the dopamine math doesn't work either. You know that feeling when you're about to open a present? That anticipation? That's dopamine firing in your brain. American sports are engineered to deliver it constantly. Basketball gives you a score every 30 seconds. Football gives you a highlight, a replay, a fantasy update, a cliffhanger before every commercial break. Constant micro-doses of anticipation and reward. Now drop that same brain into a soccer match. 90 minutes of build-up. Maybe one goal. Sometimes zero. To a reward system trained on constant scoring, the World Cup feels like a slot machine that never pays out. That's not boredom. That's a mismatch in reward schedules. Here's the twist, though. That scarcity is exactly what makes the rest of the world lose their minds. In psychology, it's called intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful reward schedule known to science. Goals are rare and unpredictable, so when one finally arrives, the payoff is explosive. It's the same principle that makes slot machines so effective. The world's brains were trained to wait for the jackpot. American brains were trained to expect a payout on every possession. Same machine, different programming. But there's another layer. Sports fans everywhere experience something called burgeoning, basking in reflected glory. Psychologist Robert Cialdini famously found that college students wore their school colors more often the Monday after their team won, and said, "We won after victories, but they lost after defeats." Notice the pronoun switch. Here's the thing about Americans and the World Cup. Their identity slots are already full. The NFL team, the NBA team, the college team they've screamed for since they were kids. The national soccer team shows up asking for emotional real estate that got sold decades ago. And then there's the 4-year problem. Humans build attachment through repetition. Psychologists call these one-sided bonds parasocial relationships, and they need constant contact to survive. You see your NFL team 17 weeks a year. You see the national soccer team for 1 month every 4 years. That's not a relationship. That's a stranger who visits occasionally and expects you to cry when they leave. Then there's the pressure. Every 4 years, Americans get lectured. The whole world watches this. It's the beautiful game. How can you not care? And psychology has a name for what happens next. Reactance. When people feel pushed to adopt an opinion, they push back to protect their sense of freedom. "You have to love soccer," makes the indifferent even more indifferent. The evangelism backfires. Now, before the comment section explodes, I'm not saying one way is better than the other. but I am saying there are legitimate psychological differences, and understanding them is fascinating. And let's be honest about something else. For some Americans, ignoring the World Cup is a defense mechanism. Maybe soccer always felt like something that belonged to somewhere else. Maybe they tried to watch once, didn't understand the offside rule, and felt stupid asking. Maybe they're pushing back against being told their sports are inferior. Maybe they just never understood why grown adults weep over a ball crossing a line. Your indifference might have a backstory. Or maybe you just find it boring. Both are valid. But here's the part that explains so much about why the world and America sometimes can't understand each other. It comes down to how you experience meaning. World Cup fans find meaning in national narrative, redemption arcs, underdogs toppling giants, an entire country holding its breath on a single penalty kick, real drama with genuine stakes. Americans who don't watch aren't rejecting narrative. They're getting it somewhere else. Their own leagues, their own rivalries, their own stories. One group finds epic drama in a World Cup final. The other finds it in a playoff run, a series finale, a personal project. Same human need. Different delivery system. And here's the wildest part of all. Right now, the World Cup is happening in America. The games are in their own backyard. The greatest players on earth are performing down the street, and millions of Americans still aren't watching. Think about that. It was never about access. It was never about time zones. It's about wiring. You can move the stadium across the ocean, but you can't move the reward map that got built in someone's brain 30 years ago. So, what does all this mean? If you're an American who doesn't watch the World Cup, you're not missing some fundamental human experience. You're just different. Your reward system, your tribal identity, your emotional bandwidth, they were all claimed by other things long before this tournament arrived. And that's perfectly okay. The next time someone asks, "Did you see the match?" and you genuinely could not care less, remember, you're not broken. You're not unpatriotic. Your brain is just playing a different game. One with its own stakes, its own tribes, and its own jackpots. If this resonated with you, you're probably going to love why some people feel absolutely nothing during movies that make everyone else cry, and what that reveals about how their brains process emotion. Click one of these videos to find out why you feel things a little differently than the crowd.